on empowering and inspiring women to lead community-wide change that ends poverty. Membership is comprised of caring citizens who contribute $1,000 or more annually to United Way of Greater Greensboro. We are eager to help our community. Our focus and initiatives include elevating the United Way's focus on supporting individuals along a path to employment that moves their community, move their communities, households out of poverty, empowering women in communities to overcome challenges and barriers to succeed. Specifically, we help local women and families move from poverty to financial stability by offering skills, training, coaching, and mentoring. In addition, every other year, we help host United Way's Community Speaker Series, and we will soon host our 12th annual Handbags to End Poverty in the next week, which is on May 20th. We are busy, and we truly know that our investments are making an impact. We are so excited that you have joined us today, and we are even more excited to hear from our speaker today, who will challenge and inspire us to continue creating pathways to employment through leveraging education. But before we get started, I want to recognize VF for their generous sponsorship of United Way's Theories of Change series. Thank you so much, VF. Also, in case you haven't heard, your United Way is celebrating its centennial anniversary in this community. Since March 1, 1922, United Way's mission has centered on making this community a better place for all people. In fact, United Way work has always focused on the importance of bringing the community together to address its greatest needs. And while leadership and community needs have changed over the years, United Way, And while leadership and community needs have changed over the years, United Way's mission to help the people of Greater Greensboro have remained the same. This mission has always been led and defined by volunteers and caring people in our community. And when the caring people of the community ask United Way to address their need, they convene and rally our community to tackle the issue head on. Such was the case when this community informed United Way that poverty was the issue it needed to address. Prior to the economic impact of COVID-19, local poverty was impacting children, adults, and families at higher rates than national averages. We must do better, not only for the people who need our support, but for the future of our community. When we collaborate, great things happen. Together, we must make bold to address poverty. We must be bold to address poverty. Take a moment to watch this short video to discover how bold we need to be.
Our community has spoken.
And it's time for all of us to face reality.
The pandemic and the renewed civil rights movement
highlighted real challenges many families face.
And the often overlooked existence of local poverty.
Facts can no longer be disputed.
Poverty is an everyday truth for over 57,000 people in Greater Greensboro.
1 out of every 4 children
in Greensboro is growing up in poverty.
There are neighborhoods in our community
where over 40% of the population
have lived in poverty for multiple generations.
Poverty is relentless.
And decades of systemic issues
have disproportionately impacted people of color.
These facts are unacceptable.
Our community has proven time and time again
that we can accomplish anything when we are united.
That's why for over a year, United Way of Greater Greensboro listened to
and collaborated with thousands of people in our community
to take our efforts of ending local poverty to the next level.
Together, we developed a bold goal that belongs to all of us.
As a community united in equity and lasting solutions,
3,000 households in Greater Greensboro.
Will leave generational poverty by 2030.
Imagine, on average, over 300 households per year.
Leaving poverty over the next 9 years.
At United Way, everything we do is committed to helping people leave poverty.
We collaborate with nonprofits, businesses, leaders,
and caring people from all across our community
to generate collective impact. United, we will achieve the bold goal
by creating and funding strategic partnerships
with proven outcomes
that provide education, training, and support
to help people get jobs that can provide for their households.
We'll continue to operate our nationally recognized family success centers,
where children and adults are receiving coordinated services in one location.
And bold goals require bold innovation,
which is why we're developing a countywide mobile-friendly network
that will connect people to services
and coordinators
who will help them identify,
track, and achieve their personal goals of leaving poverty.
We cannot do this work alone.
It's time to put our collective efforts into building a community that benefits all of us.
Local children, adults, and families need your support.
It's time to be bold.
Visit unitedwaygso.org
to learn more, take action, and make a donation today.
Wow, what a wonderful video. And it's going to take bold. People in our community are facing barriers that are perpetuated by systems that often do not work together for their benefit. It is our responsibility to do what we can to provide resources and support that makes their transition out of poverty as easy and streamlined as possible. As a community, we must do better. United Way's strategic approach or theory of change to address poverty is based on connecting households in our community for key areas of service and support. We believe helping someone achieve educational success is key. We believe helping someone live a healthy lifestyle is key. We believe helping someone achieve financial stability, especially through family sustaining employment, is key. And we believe that expanding someone's access to basic needs such as food, shelter, and clothing is key. Each one of these areas is critical in helping a person transition out of poverty. Some people need support in all areas. Some may only need support in one area. But at the end of the day, United Way strategy is designed to meet someone where they are and serve their individual needs. Today, we will learn more about how education and employment can be paired together to create impact. Please join me in welcoming Melanie Neal, Chair of Women's United, who will introduce our speaker and lead him through some questions and answers.
Thank you, Blanche. I am honored to serve as chair of Women United, and I am so excited to hear from our guests today. Prior to joining Guilford College as president in January of 2022, Kyle Farmbry has served as a professor at Rutgers University, Newark, University of Texas at San Antonio, San Diego State University, and Grand Valley State University. He has served as a Fulbright Fellow, examining European Union immigration policies with an emphasis on the challenges and management of the North African refugee movement and integration in the nation of Malta. He additionally engaged in research examining factors of youth, entrepreneurial, and civic engagement in South Africa. In 2016, Kyle launched the United States South African Higher Education Network, an effort aimed at building enhanced collaboration between higher education institutions in South Africa and the United States. Kyle's research and programmatic work has been supported by the Open Society Foundations, the South African Department of Higher Education and Training, the United States Fulbright Commission, and the United States Embassy in South Africa. He is currently working on a project entitled Building a Pipeline for executive level diversity, equity, and inclusion strategies, which is funded by the IBM Center for the Business of Government. He has written many books, including Migration and Xenophobia, a 3-country exploration examining issues of migration and xenophobia in the United States, Europe, and South Africa. Crisis, Disaster, and Risk, Institutional Response and Emergence. And close to our hearts at United Way, Kyle has also published The War on Poverty, a retrospective. Kyle has served on the Board of Trustees of the George Washington University. In November of 2021, he was inducted as a Fellow of the National Academy of Public Administration. Kyle received his BA, MPA, and PhD degrees from the George Washington University. He completed his Juris Doctorate degree at the Rutgers University School of Law. Please join me in welcoming Kyle Farmbry.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this. As I was watching the video, I was just very excited because it sort of reaffirmed a lot of the linkages and a lot of the integration, I think, between the work that this committee and, of course, the United Way is doing, and some of what we're mapping out here at Guilford as we are looking at the work that we've been doing since our founding back in the 1830s. Along the lines of sort of linking that to some of the work that we're hoping to do in the next few years as we map out our next strategic plan and our efforts. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today. I'm particularly looking forward to some discussion around how we can use this conversation as a launching point for some partnerships, because it seems like we want to do the same. So I understand there's some questions, and perhaps we can just dive into some of those.
That sounds great. So today we'll start off our program by asking Kyle a few questions that will relate to United Way's work of ending poverty. And we want to answer a few of your questions as well. So please, at any time, submit a question in our chat, and we'll do our best to address it after I lead our panelists through our common questions. Please remain muted and courteous during our event today. So Kyle, let's get started. So Kyle, if you will, what does poverty mean to you?
Sure. So when I think about poverty, I think about issues of gaps in society. Much of my thinking hasn't necessarily been around poverty, but it's been around disparities. And by disparities, sort of asking about sort of the widening gaps that exist and trying to find ways that we can narrow some of those gaps. Of course, there are some, I think, starting points where, particularly nowadays, we can look at the world and ask questions of, well, why exactly do we have such large populations who are without, and we can define what that without is. And then what might we do to improve the opportunities, one, to increase the wealth levels in different communities, and also minimize some of the disparities. I've had some opportunities over, actually before my career started, of thinking about and looking at different issues of poverty, both in the United States and in other countries, going back actually to work that I did in high school, going into college. I was a active volunteer with the U.S. Committee for UNICEF. And when I was 18, had a chance to go and visit some projects of UNICEF and CARE and Save the Children and other organizations in South and Central America. And that provided me with sort of the first introduction to, I think, extreme poverty from kind of an international context. And since that time, I've spent time in South Africa, where there are huge disparities. And of course, have looked at issues within in the United States, where we see sort of widening disparities. So it's for me not necessarily a question of poverty and what do we do about poverty, as much as how do we increase opportunities, and how do we look at levels of wealth, different communities, how do we create more opportunities for educational access and investment, entrepreneurial development, and other things that will ultimately help us to address some of the different issues of poverty that we might.
So did those vast experiences that you just shared, is that what led you to write a book on the war on poverty?
Yeah, so the book on the war on poverty was actually an edited book, and it's kind of a bit of a mad scramble to pull that book together. I realized that we were at the time approaching, I guess it was the 50th anniversary of the war on poverty, and trying to ask questions of what might we do to just sort of raise some of these different issues that were addressed back in the 1960s, back in sort of the radar. So, so I reached out to a number of colleagues who I knew that were doing work on housing, on family issues, on linkages between poverty and education, and compiled a number of chapters into the book. So that, I think that part of it was recognizing that there was an anniversary, and an anniversary sort of provide a good reflection point, and also knowing that that looking at inequalities has been sort of a lifetime passion for me, trying to get people thinking very actively on things that we might do to minimize different inequalities, and that again carries into the work that I'm trying to do here at Guilford.
So how did you find yourself leading Guilford College?
So, so Guilford is a college that I first heard about maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Some of the work that I've been doing has been focused a lot on issues of refugee integration. And much of that work was triggered back in 2014 and 2015 as we were becoming very aware of crises that were first happening in the central Mediterranean, but then were also happening in other parts of the world, where there was this elevated awareness of the fact that there were refugee flows. I met at the time a professor at Guilford who had founded something known as Every Campus a Refuge. Dia Abdo, in case anybody knows her, is the professor's name. And Dia, a number of years ago, saw this mobilization that was happening around the world, and asked the question of what might Guilford do as a campus in the middle of Greensboro. And she found out that we had some buildings that were unused. She went to the then president and said, well, could we use these buildings to host refugee families? And she got an okay. And in their sense, Guilford has hosted over 60 families during their sort of period between arriving in the US and going into the further sort of resettlement. So, so I learned about Guilford at the time as a school which has had, missions of social impact and social change, again, going all the way back to the 1830s. I'm sitting in my living room right now, looking out into the Guilford Woods, and when you take a walk in the Guilford Woods, are actually parts of the woods that were parts of the Underground Railroad. And you can go through and you can feel the trees, and they're actually, in some cases, nails that are still in some of the trees that were used as guides for the escaping slaves, to know that they should go this way to get north. So there is a lot that this college has done. And when I was looking for an institution to spend this phase of my career, and Guilford stood out as a place, and that the timing just sort of worked out. And so far, I have found myself in an institution which is very much about having an impact in the broader community. And that's a lot of where I'm very excited for sort of conversations with community partners like the United Way to see what else we can do, how else we might be able to partner on issues of economic inclusion and addressing wealth inequalities and poverty, et cetera.
So as you know, the city of Greensboro is an immigrant and refugee friendly city with most recently the Afghanistan refugees that have come here. And we're very, very proud of that aspect of the city. So we are certainly interested in that from you. Thank you so much. So how do you think education plays a role with poverty at all levels?
Well, education is a great equalizer. When a student enters an educational system, ideally, ideally, because there are clearly gaps in educational systems. And I think that's also something that we need to have some conversations around. But in an ideal situation, a student finishes up with high school, goes into some sort of a higher ed system. And that's not to discount opportunities in trades. I mean, that's a separate and important conversation. But as someone who's leading an institution, I would say that students enter institutions, we provide them with both a training and hone some of their skills in creative thinking and critical thinking, and work with them in terms of planning next stages of their professional and intellectual growth. And if everything works out, then the students are in a better place when they complete their degrees. So I think that there's kind of the broader stepping stone that systems of education provide, but there are also, I think, important individual things that occur in educational settings. Having served as a professor, and professors have really wonderful one-to-one interactions with students. I have lots of cases of students who came from a certain background, didn't have access to certain opportunities, who needed some time to work on some skills. And at the end of the process and some of the interactions that I or colleagues had, the students are in different places. They're earning more, they're able to contribute to their communities differently. They are moving forward in some ways that are just having a big impact, of course, upon themselves and others. And I think that there's the one-to-one, the individual stories of how education can impact someone's well-being. And then there's the systematic ways that educational systems can impact well-being.
So how do you think, what are the educational pathways to employment trends right now?
So I think that some of them link to, one, being cognizant of opportunities. So making sure that you are mapping pathways to some of the job opportunities in communities. I think that there are also some strategies for mapping pathways to being able to create opportunities. So I'm a big proponent of looking at entrepreneurial and sort of innovation in education, innovation and entrepreneurship, and finding ways that we can create and support the sort of next generation of people who will start businesses and create jobs and create opportunities for others. So pathways to employment, pathways to creating employment, to creating opportunities. And some of those pathways might include even pathways to further education that again enables one to become a sort of having a greater influence in their communities and society. So I really look at education as being sort of a critical pathway or at the development that creates more opportunities.
I really like that next generation reference. That's correct. So what can all colleges do to create more educational opportunities for our local population here in Greensboro and Guilford County that would result in increased pathways to employment?
I think that there are both direct things related to the jobs that we do and we're supposed to do in colleges and universities, educating our students and doing the best job we possibly can in educating. I think that there's some secondary things that colleges and universities should do. I'm not convinced that we are always doing. And as I've been reflecting on my role here at Guilford over the past, I guess June 1, it will be 6 months, trying to sort of reflect deeply on what might we do. So I'm concerned about educational inequities here in Greensboro and in Guilford County. If you look at a number of the indicators, you will see that there are schools that are doing with, and there are schools that are doing without, and there's some children in local schools and districts that are not having the same opportunities and aren't having the same quality of education. And I think that colleges and universities can play a critical role in terms of supporting local education systems. I think they can play a critical role in terms of showing the children and their families the possibilities of what might lie before, and helping people to understand the value of continued education. And then I think that there are also some roles in terms of looking at ways that we can partner with the local entrepreneurial ecosystem agencies, or the local sort of workforce agencies, to get really creative partnering to improve local economies. So we've been having some conversations around how Guilford might engage as what I would refer to as an anchor institution, meaning that we are, I want us to not only think about Guilford as an institution in Greensboro, I'd rather us think about Guilford as an institution of Greensboro. So as we look at Greensboro's challenges, and particularly those challenges related to inequalities, we need to be a partner. We need to work with the United. We need to work with everyone who is on Zoom session is also committed to this type of work, and figure out how we can work alongside you and kind of walk the path with you to help address some of these local challenges, because there are challenges as much as there are everyone else's challenges here.
Do you have any examples of strong college and business partnerships?
So I'm still learning about some of the ones here. I think if you ask me that question in a few months, I will have a long list of things that I can sort of brag that Guilford is doing locally, and that's also sort of an area where we're excited for the partnerships that might come out of this conversation. My previous institution, Rutgers University Newark, was doing some phenomenal things. I spent 16 years at Rutgers Newark, and we had a very intense commitment to the community, and that's where I'm, I've learned a lot of lessons there that I'm trying to bring into this new role. Some partnerships around trying to increase the number of students from Newark who were A, attending college, and B, that were attending Rutgers Newark. I would like to see more local students attending Guilford, but I'd like to see more just sort of attending college, period. There's some things that I've seen in terms of colleges and universities thinking about their spending, making sure that they are purchasing a lot from institutions in the local community. We have some proposals that we've actually recently submitted to do some partnerships around economic development and entrepreneurial development. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that those will come together. Probably the strongest and the biggest example that I've drawn some lesson from over the years goes back to work that I did in South Africa. I worked on and off for a year in a fellowship at the University of Pretoria's Mamelodi campus. The University of Pretoria is one of the larger institutions in South Africa. It has a campus in the Mamelodi township. And you can sort of think about all the township types of imagery that one might have. And by having a college campus right in the middle of a township where levels of poverty are at extremes, but there were kids that were getting some enhanced educational opportunities. There were kids that were spending time on a campus versus in their shack, which had water that they would have to share with several households, or a latrine have to share with several households. Just watching some of the different programs that were being taken from the University of Pretoria Mamelodi's campus into the community of Mamelodi, I think stands out as an example of some of the things that I've seen.
So if you could wave a magic wand to get local colleges to collaborate, what would you do?
I think partially moved from the 24-hour in a day system to about a 27-hour in a day system. I mean, I've had interactions with many, not yet most of, but many of the local college presidents, and there's a shared commitment to working in partnership and on behalf of this city and this county as much as possible. And I think that the challenge for all of us, as was probably everybody on the Zoom, is a challenge of time. And just being able to create the space where we can come together with creative ideas and figure out how we can leverage the resources to turn those ideas. But the interest is there. And I think it's often a matter of just connecting dots and leveraging the partners to do some different things. If I might add, and actually if I can maybe put a plug in for something that we're doing at Guilford, that I'd love to extend some invitations to everybody soon. We are actually holding a meeting, a conference in June here at Guilford College, 7th to the 10th, something that we're referring to as the Guilford Dialogues. And basically the dialogues is a goal, it's an opportunity to bring people from ideally across the country, but specifically from Guilford County and some of the surrounding counties to campus to spend a few days intensively talking about ways that we might partner around issues of economic inclusion. So we're intending to create a space for ideas that we can implement and work with one another to see come to fruition. And part of that is the space creating and creating the time for us to come up with some different initiatives. So that I think is something that colleges can do, and it's something that we're doing, and we invite as many partners to participate in that effort.
So how can the United Way help you with that endeavor?
So I'm looking forward to some continued partnerships with the United Way, both on that conference, but I hope that we can extend some invitations to everyone that's participating during this Zoom session, and then also think about how we might be able to map some strategies moving forward. When you're looking at issues of wealth creation, poverty alleviation, minimizing disparities, including more people in sort of the economic infrastructure, there aren't easy answers. You need some good research. I'm proud to say that Guilford, along with many other institutions locally, we've got some great researchers. We've got students who are really passionate about these issues. You need sort of the people power, and you need to just sort of leverage all of the human capital and other types of capital to address these challenges. And we're having some discussions. I think that this conversation is a part of the discussions and ways that we might be able to partner with you. And I certainly look forward to concretizing some next steps in terms of these partnerships.
All right. So how do people need to advocate to create more educational opportunities for others?
I think first is just being aware of some of the opportunities that don't exist. It's very easy to live in kind of our own bubbles. It's very easy to say, well, my son or my daughter attends school X, Y, and Z, and I've been able to create these opportunities within my family system. It's a lot harder to kind of critically ask the question of, well, if my child has those opportunities, why can't that child over there? And what can I do to make sure that that more kids get the opportunities that we would want our own children to have? So I think sort of critically thinking about where we are and asking the questions, and then trying to start to connect the dots and think about leveraging of the resources and raising the awareness and just building the partnerships that we know exist and that might not exist.
So as you know, Greensboro and Guilford County, we have a large college student population here. How can we as a community better leverage the young and smart minds of those college students while they're living here?
So we actually had some conversations on campus a few days ago about things that we're doing and things that we might do. I'm always interested in looking at opportunities to support tutoring. I'm always looking for opportunities to bring students to campus. I'm always looking for opportunities to broaden the horizons of students. I'm a big fan of getting people out of areas where they're familiar. For about 6 years, I actually ran a program, sort of created and ran a program where we took high school students from different urban centers to Cape Town, South Africa. And over that time period, we took about 120 students from, we had 5 different cities that we were working with. And to see the perspectives change for a student who may have been the first one in the family, not only to have a passport, in some cases even get on a plane, who would fly 15 hours to the other side of the world, and to just have her eyes just opened up. And then to watch the pathways when those students came back. It was transformational, just sort of watching their interest and their growth. Things don't need to be that grand. I think finding ways to get students to Washington, D.C., or if a student hasn't been on some local hiking trails or to the local beaches, or to, outside of North Carolina, just broadening their horizons, letting them know of all of the educational institutions. I mean, Greensboro is a college town. I don't hear Greensboro talking about itself as much as I'd like as a college town, but I think we very much are. We've got students who have the energy and the desire, so creating opportunities for them to get into the community. So I think that there are a lot of things that we can do to leverage our talents.
Yes, thank you so much. Great ideas and great educational pieces that can be offered. So now we want to hear from our attendees. So I am going to the chat box and see what questions they have for you. So the first one, what is your perspective on organizations working together to maximize the opportunity to make bold changes in our community to end poverty other than what we're doing today? And what do you consider a bold change?
So let me start off with the working together piece, because I think that that's often a challenge. And I think that as much as we can break down organizational, and in some cases even inter-organizational or intra-organizational silos, because we can do so much more when we are working collaboration. And unfortunately, that's something that's lost a lot as organizations are competing for resources, and there are different egos that are involved. And sometimes we need to put the egos to the side and just say, look, if we work together, if we figured out that you have X number of dollars or X number of people or talents in certain areas, and we have those other talents and resources and come together, it's just a lot more. So I think creating space to have those conversations, it's a critical first step. I think that the second step is educating ourselves on some of the different root causes, and out of some of that education, creating some space to come up with some new opportunities and new ideas. And then at some point, you just sort of have to do things. You've got to test stuff out, and you've got to say, we are going to work in a safe enough space so that we're comfortable knowing that we're going to make some mistakes, but we're also going to learn a lot through that process. And just making sure that we've got enough of a cushion to just take risks and to go ahead and implement and try and also figure out ways to, I think, ultimately look at the work we're doing as making investments into the community. We want to look at long-term community change and long-term community growth, and that means that we do need to think about what we're doing as making long-term investments.
Thank you. I think a key point is that if you're going to be bold, there's always going to be risk. And so that's a very, very good point. So the next question is, one of the features of Guilford College that shows up in my interactions in the community is the many adult Guilford graduates. Getting a college education later in life is one of the paths to financial stability. What are the things that Guilford does to help so many working adults get degrees?
So, so my understanding actually is that a number of years ago, Guilford had a very large adult student population, and then because of some of the sort of state level funding issues, we've had to decrease the size of that program. We've had a team taking a look at what we can do to grow our formal adult education program again. I do think that there's some things that we can do in the interim. One is, of course, recognizing that the sort of catchment group for college education, it's a wide group. We're no longer talking about the traditional 18 to 22-year-olds. We are talking about a sort of broader age range, and just making sure that we are signaling that Guilford is not just a college for the traditional 18 to 22-year-olds. I mean, we want people who are non-traditional students, and we want to find ways to support them in their educational attainment. We also are looking at some new graduate opportunities. We right now have one graduate program. We actually have some requests and proposals in front of our accrediting body for 2 more programs. So if things go as I anticipate they will, in the fall, we'll have a new MBA program, and we'll have a new master's program in international sports management, and we'll currently have a master's program in criminal justice. In our discussions around the MBA program, it's actually something I'm particularly excited about. Our approach is not going to be simply the traditional MBA. We're going to look at MBA studies with a question of social impact and social improvement, and triple bottom line activities, and that we look at the roles of business as sort of an ethical component of broader community. So growing new programs, and as we're doing that, tailoring them to needs and interest in local challenges. And then I think the other is trying to find ways that we can create some certificate learning opportunities, find ways that we can do some code training. I mean, I'm hoping that at some point we can have some conversations with United Way and other organizations around ways that we can partner in terms of some of the training needs that people in the local nonprofit sector might have around organizational performance, and particularly in areas of poverty alleviation or wealth building or disparities reduction. So there's some stuff that we're doing, but there's a whole lot more that we want to do to tap into sort of working adult population.
Thank you. I know it's always an exciting time on the college campus when you're offering new programs and new degree opportunities for students, because there's always some that have been waiting for it and it's finally arrived. So thank you for that.
Sure.
I do not see any other questions in our chat. If any participants have any questions, go ahead and enter them right now. I'll give it about a minute before we move on. But Kyle, thank you so much for your insights and in meeting with us today. I'm looking very forward to meeting you in person, because I'm definitely going to hear you again in 6 months. If I have to schedule a lunch meeting, that's what we're going to do.
We'll do it in sooner than 6 months. So yeah, I think partnerships start now. So let's
Absolutely.
Let's start those conversations.
All right. So I want to thank everyone for the great questions that were put in the chat. We hope you have a better understanding of our United Way impact and the role that we can all play in helping our community create a pathway to employment through education. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to the Women United co-chair, Blanche Cheeley, to close us out.
Thank you.
Blanche, you're muted.
Something you told me not to do. Something you told me to take care of. So thank you, Melanie. And on behalf of Women United, thank you, Kyle Farmbry, for joining us today. Great discussion. Let's give him a virtual round of applause from our Zoomies. All I can say is, wow, I'm excited to continue supporting and elevating United Way's local efforts to end poverty. Myself, I believe in that, you talked a lot about, coming together, dropping the egos, just really trying to figure this out, because there's a lot of different challenges out there, but I think we can do it. So I'm very excited to continue this conversation. I have no doubt Women United's investments are helping create and fund partnerships and initiatives that are working together to help people leave poverty. Together we can, and I know we will, continue to move families out of poverty. Please continue to support this work. Please continue to invest in this work. Thank you for joining us today. We're looking forward to the future. Take care and bye for now.